Charles Dickens writes about the best and the worst of times, how it was the season of light and the season of darkness, the spring of hope and the winter of despair, how we had everything before us, yet we had nothing before us. That's how I describe food security in the 21st century. For me, personally, food represents my light and darkness. I both love it and hate it, because one way or another, I think about it all the time. When I was first introduced to the concept of food security, I felt anxious, because I either wanted to eat too much or not enough. And I thought that was the only problem I had with food. However, now that I'm aware of the greater issue, I feel fortunate for what I have every day on my plate. This is not to say I'm out of my war with food. Food still represents both my light and darkness to my life, but now it's converted into my infatuation. When you think about food security, you might imagine a bunch of masked workers regulating agricultural production, or non-perished goods, or organic foods. But oh, it's so much more than that. Food security is about the environment, politics, nutrition, your emotions, culture, art, health, society. And in a way, food tells a tale of two cities, one in the spring of hope and one in the winter of despair. Let me explain. I, a first world, very fortunate person from the spring of hope, am fortunate enough to have fresh food on my plate every single day, as you all are. And that's not enough. Anytime we're bored, we can go stuff ourselves up with snacks from a vending machine or from our kitchen pantry. But do we ever actually listen to our bodies? Could we ever think that it was possible to live only on the essentials? And what even are those bare essentials? Well, the average body of a human is supposed to live on 12,000 to 2,500 calories per day. However, all of us who have food right next door can easily stick to over 3,000 without even noticing it. Hence the paradox. Nowadays, we're overfed but undernourished. It's amazing to think how with all the food that leaves our plates to waste every single day, thousands of mouths could be fed. However, children in developing countries are suffering from kwashiorkor, protein deficiency, malnutrition, and lack of energy consumption, which overall affects their physical and cognitive development. These people seem to be living in the winter of despair. How can we even think about a prosperous, educated future when half the world is living underneath the social poverty line, according to Jason Hickel, and is being alienated of their right to food? Interestingly enough, we've gotten to a point where with all the food systems available to us, restaurants, online delivery systems, apps, and even those really tasty videos that allow us to easily cook from home, food has become an increasingly integrated part of our daily routine. However, we no longer seem to know what we're eating. Food that's not even real food is what most people eat. Like, what is real food even? We dine whilst watching TV, we have lunch when we're rushing to a meeting, we binge on midnight snacks to beat our instant cravings, and all in all, we never seem to give food a second thought. Your nutritionist might tell you to lower your simple carb intake, or drink more water, or eat miracle berries and ginger or something of the sort. Ketogenesis, FODMAPs, juicing, paleo, Mediterranean, vegan. These are all ways of entertaining people with food. And they have their reasons. They work for some people. However, it's much simpler than what your dietist might tell you. Think of it this way. The closer your food is to the ground, the better. If you can imagine your food grazing on land or growing from the ground, then eat it. But if you can't even get yourself around pronouncing a name from the ingredients list of a packaged food item, then don't even think about buying it. Imagine what that would do to your body. But here's the greater issue. How are we to provide food for the whole world? That's a big challenge right there. By 2050, according to National Geographic, we'll have to feed 2 billion more people than we're feeding right now. And maybe when you think about environmental threats, you can imagine your car, or fumes, industrial processes, pollution, fossil fuels. Definitely not your breakfast. Maybe increasing agricultural production? Well, the current agricultural yield can feed up to 1.5 Earths. Or maybe bringing boxes and boxes of food to famine-brought areas of Africa? Well, believe it or not, food banks and humanitarian NGOs around the world have attempted to do this. Yet the scale is such that no matter how much food there is, bringing it to everybody is really hard. And then there are resource wars. Every war in the world ends up being a resource war, the fight for food and for water. And what will happen in the not so far away future, where everything we eat is either lab-grown, enriched, or synthetic? Right now, it's the time for us to start making better choices. With only one of you becoming vegetarian, the world isn't going to change. But if we start noticing that we don't need red meat on each and every one of our meals to survive, that's where we have a greater chance. But there are always issues. Eating disorders in all of their forms, lack of information, lack of time. We have to eat anyways. But if we must eat to survive, then why don't we make the most out of this experience? Why don't we sit down and become aware and conscious of what we're eating and start changing and enjoying the whole experience we have surrounding food? There's our instinct. We're driven by everything that our physiognomy, our social construct, and our conveniences bring. Like, whenever would you crave a pumpkin pie in the middle of the summer? Try to eat according to the season, for example. Before, people used to eat around the dining room table. They used to share around food, talk around food, enjoy every single bite. Through nutrition and nourishment, we can change our whole life. We can connect ourselves to whole cultures, people, environment, all through the flavors they each bring. We can trigger positive emotional reactions. We can travel around the world, and most importantly, we can fuel our bodies. This here can be the start of your life relationship with food. There are 1,000 things you can do. For instance, try and go for that apple, or reconsider the next time you scrape your reminders of food into the bin. Or maybe try fasting for a day to see what other people feel around the world. Challenge your friends, challenge your schools to go on a meatless Monday or a Taco Tuesday. And try to dine with friends, with your family often. Try new, varied, different, flavorful food. Or here's a harder one. Try quitting sugar for 30 days. It takes time to change, to understand what your body is assimilating, to assimilate what you're facing. I still have a really long life ahead of me to keep learning. But see, food is much more complicated than you would have thought. It's both the driver of all of our problems and the solution to our future. And it's our way to eradicate the winter and transition into a spring of hope, a spring of generous and colorful harvest for the whole world. Thank you.